Happy today. I am William Brown from IamWilliamBrown.com. And I've learned during this time that there's only 3 days. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And the um, but I recognize that it's Friday, and so that occurs to me on so many levels, and it is something that I, I notice. I just noticed that I am getting an error message in something. So um, I hope people can see me on all the pages that we have. Sometimes when you start something new, it just you know things happen the way they happen, and so if you can see me and hear me and everything, please let me know in the comments, and we can go from there. But the conversation that we're having today is on the word pause. And during this time, I have really embraced this a lot more. It's almost because um, it was thrust upon you. It was like, okay, everybody gets a timeout right now, and everybody has to kind of an opportunity to evaluate your life. And so really approaching this word is still interesting, and I'm figuring out for myself really what does pause mean for me. And so, because I have so many amazing and wonderful friends, I invite them within this conversation. And so I want to introduce to you one of my friends. Good morning.
Good morning, Will.
How are you doing today?
It is 70 degrees and breezy in southern Florida, so all is well with the world.
All is right with the world. I don't know if you're bragging or just kind of just sharing information. It's like,
sharing my abundance with you.
Right. So that's great. So before we get started, I would really love for you to introduce yourself, however feels comfortable to you.
Great. Hey, y'all. I'm Shelly Adelle. She, her. If you follow me on social media, taglines are creative percolator, enthusiastic human, spiritual enthusiast, and my work is revolve around health and wellness through the yogic perspective.
Hmm.
There you go.
So there you go. And so Shelly, how does pause occur to you?
First of all, I was both excited and nervous about my word. And I thought that because I'm a yoga teacher, that they would be the perfect word for me. And then also because I'm a yoga teacher, it's such a vast topic. So one example from the yogic tradition is the application of a breath technique, what we call pranayama. And the title of the technique is kumbhaka, which roughly translates to retention. And there are several opportunities within this breath exercise to inhale and retain or pause, holding on full. And the inverse is also true. Then we can exhale and hold on empty. And after we learn the protocol, just, inhale for a 4 or 6 count, pause on full, exhale for that same 4 or 6 count, and pause on empty. After maybe a minute of time of just being really comfortable in the rhythm of the breath, then we invite our students to start to investigate what's happening in the pause, or to observe what's happening in the pause. And from my own experience of teaching 20 years and being a student for longer, is that there's actually so much activity that is happening within the pause. For example, you might hear the heartbeat. The first time I heard my heartbeat, I had exhaled, holding on empty as instructed. And
Right.
it was like this whooshy sound in my ears. I'm like, what the heck is
Right.
going on? And it
Right.
took a while for me to realize, oh, that's literally the sound of my heartbeat, and that's the sound of the blood that's moving through. And then over time, I realized that um, the the internal connection that started to cultivate led to a level of discernment, which led to a level of curiosity, which led to
Wow.
a level of more spaciousness. So for
Wow.
me, the pause is the spaciousness, and that
Right.
there is or is not activity happening that is discernible for us within that spaciousness.
Wow. It's no, I definitely appreciate that. Because I I don't say I struggle with the pause, because I hear that in the busyness of my life, that's where I find, meaning. That's where I find my purpose and all that. That's the story that I tell myself. And to hear you, speak on it, it is more about the in the pause. That's when you get a lot more of our access to an understanding of purpose and meanings and what has actually happened. But I like I said, I find myself fighting that or resisting that.
Yeah, Leo from Zen Habits, right when shelter in place hit for most people in the United States, at least, and certainly in the denser cities on each of the coasts, he came out with a blog post that said we're all monastics now.
Hmm.
Living that like
Wow.
monastery style life, and that hits so true for me. And if we look at many of the religious traditions, there's some version of either taking pause to take stock or taking pause to, as you say, reevaluate our priorities and our goals, uh,
Right.
and that there used to be just privilege that created an opportunity for someone, let's say, to take a retreat. Right, I have
Right.
the privilege of childcare, I've got the privilege of the resources to pay for said retreat, I've got the resources to travel to the retreat, and then also just the um, emotional or intuitive maturity to undertake this. Well,
Right.
now the whole world stopped. So all of a sudden, at the same time, whether we have tools or not, whether or not we're really into it, we all have this privilege of space and time to actually
Right.
assess. And I'm just so hopeful for people for that.
Yeah, it is something, for me, that there was a point. It's almost like 5 or 6 years ago, almost 7 years ago now, that I was feeling that I needed a pause. I needed a break. I needed to reset. I needed to, reboot my life. But at the other side of that was, the busyness of my life. And so it's like, how can I honor this feeling of, restarting, recharging, and all the things that I feel that I need to do, but still keep my life. And like you were saying about, there's a privilege in retreat and setting. And I think there's there's also a recognition that we don't need, a stop in our life. It's like a pause can be like a breath, a moment. And really connecting to that breath or that moment and being present to that will give us some things that we need, that we say that we desire to need, but we feel that we can't take, we're too busy for,
Mhm.
and all that. What do you think the disconnect in, I guess, in the recognition of the power of just taking a moment?
Wow. So I can speak for myself then. For myself, when I first started to undertake a contemplative practice, it was in a reaction to like the rhythm and the tenor of my life was creating illness and instability. Not that I necessarily had the words to frame it in that way,
Right.
But certainly the pace was untenable,
Right.
which I think is really culturally what we're really up against right now. That the pace and the tenor of high speed consumer capitalist culture without time to live what feels like our moral barometer is untenable. So
Right.
for me, this idea of the disconnect is the payoff. It doesn't happen immediately for me.
Right.
And that it was a worthy undertaking. And I'm not sure if it's a worthy undertaking because it was the practice itself that there was unworthiness around, or myself that there was worthiness around.
Right.
The answer is probably yes and.
Right. Right. I get that.
I get people coming to me all the time that they want to start a yoga practice, and I've been teaching for over 20 years, and like only recently, very recently, I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but only very recently did I start asking people what their goals were. Because so many people would come to me and I want to start yoga, and I failed to ask them as their teacher, what is your goal? And then I just started giving them information. Here's the posture work. Here's the meditation work. Here's the breathing work. And it would have been so much and will be so much more efficient if I ask you, well, what is your goal? If your goal is serenity, then there are different techniques that we can apply and get there much more quickly than fancy yoga shapes and $100 yoga pants.
Right. Yeah, I think the the intentionality of the pause, and like you said, what do you want out of it is a key, because I've mentioned before that my conversation around peace has expanded, because when I was growing up, my mom would, single parent, would come home in the craziness of the house and say, I want peace and quiet. And I think as an adult and as a parent, really what she was asking for was quiet, and I recognized in my life that I was accepting quiet for peace, and really experiencing that even when it's quiet, there can be a lot of unrest or not peace happening in that quiet. And for me, really embracing the pause gives me access to the rest, the peace, the kind of reflective, to kind of really be engaged what's so in my life, my breath, my heartbeat, all the things that are present that I have lost awareness of because of the busyness. But really looking to a way to kind of, connect. It's not even reconnect. It's that it is just be awareness of the connections that I have. There's a lot of breaths that I take that I am unaware of, and there's a number of heartbeats that I'm unaware of, but they're still happening. And just really being able to pause and to have a reflection on that is more important in this journey that I'm on. And it's like, I want to be busy, I want to be productive, I want to see value in my work, but at the same time, I want to be able to have a level of gratitude and appreciation for the moments that I allow to get away from me.
Mm. It reminds me of this idea of like the pianist, a piano player, where the difference between clunking out the notes versus the finesse of the space between the notes is indicative of a level of mastery. And there's the tennis players, right? The Williams sisters. What makes them extraordinary outside of just their athleticism and their discipline and their facility around their skill set is that, once the point is made, or the ball, I don't even know the right terms, but once the play has stopped,
right,
this command and reset of like recommitting to the breath, standing upright in the 15 seconds they get to walk back to the service line.
Right.
That, like, if we start to create an awareness of, almost think of a pause as a transition. There's a transitional space between all of the beats of life, and one is not required to connect to that. However, there's power and insight and space within that could be utilized.
Right. Well, it's like there's a word that I guess because of the community that we met in in our tribe of Camp GLP, that I didn't use the language of creating a space. That it's just you just show up, and whatever you get, you get. But I'm really I really appreciate the people within our community, and my ability to honor the space that has been created for conversations and for moments like this. And it's really, for me, it's showing up as it's creating the pause, creating. I was like the spas. It's like the space and the pause, the pause, right? We've created new words here, right? But it is like within that space, it gives us the opportunity to appreciate the moments, to create incredible things. And that's why at camp you were able to have these random heartfelt, deep conversations that it would seem like they come out of nowhere, but it was like it was created in that pause that were created by the staff and and Jonathan and Stephanie in that community.
I almost think that a synonym to the word pause is presence.
Okay.
So like learning that skill of taking the time in the transitional period and taking the time to observe, which leads to being more thoughtful, which then leads to being more active, and that the gift of that practice is really being present so that we can have these juicy conversations and meet each other in our humanness as it is.
Right. Yeah. I think that, telling ourselves, or I guess, or stop telling ourselves the story that we don't have time for, we can't make time for.
I mean, if we have 20 minutes to hang out on Instagram, I've got 20 minutes for a contemplative practice of any sort.
Right. Even within this show, there was a number of people that have been encouraging me to kind of, it's like, go Bill, go, just keep on going. And it's like, the level of commitment to do this, on the daily is really impressive. And, and when I looked at my life, I was like, I waste more time during the day than the time that, within these conversations. And so it's like, yeah, this is, I am committed to having conversations like this. and I didn't realize it. And I had to admit that to myself. I've shared on a couple other shows that I tried to have these conversations with my wife, and, my wife loves me, but she was like, yeah, we're not having these conversations like this every day. Right? It's too much. Right? To be able to have access to my friends that are willing to have these level of conversations and reflections for, a half an hour or 45 minutes or so brings me life. And it really connects me to my friends on a level that, I thought I had, but I didn't know because I wasn't in conversations, with them. And so this is just admitting within these moments, the desire to have this reflection, desire, and finding out what my needs are, or what really sparks me, and not just saying that I have amazing, wonderful friends, but talking to my amazing, wonderful friends is like a novel concept, right?
Yeah, your earlier question of where's the disconnect, sometimes it's the disconnect is, any number of things causes the disconnect. And once we don't know what we don't know, right? We're fallible as humans. We don't know what we don't know. And then, you'll be in conversation with one person that leads you to, discover that there's Facebook, which then leads you to discover that there's Facebook Live, which then leads you, into one conversation leads to the next.
Right.
I keep coming back to this idea of the transition. There's this concept in improvisation. So my background was in stage performance. Back in the day, I wanted to be an actor.
Me too, right?
So I took all these classes, and one of them was in improvisation. And there's this concept called yes and. So there's a pause there. Yes and then. So when you say to me, I'd like to have a conversation, yes, and what will we talk about?
Right.
Something, and it almost sounds so simple that we miss it. Right. And that's where the disconnect is that with the pressure of what external success is supposed to give us, somehow we missed that within the spaciousness and within the pause, that we actually are more wise and more intelligent and more intuitive than we remember. So for me, that disconnect is once that starts to like bubble up to the surface of, oh, my needs matter or my desires matter just as much as someone else, then everything shifts in service of that.
Right. No, I too have a performing arts, background, and I felt that I wasn't good in improv, and I just came to this conclusion almost a year or so ago, is because I think the power of improv is accepting reality, or what's so. And I think there were so many times that in my life, because of the environment that I was in, I wanted to, I guess, dismiss reality. I wanted to not acknowledge the pain or the disappointment that was happening. So because that was my practice, or I was judging it, that I couldn't play with improv. I couldn't be present to, I couldn't say yes to things, because for me, yes was a dangerous place to be. If I said yes in the realities that were around me, it was, I could get hurt, I could, I can be disappointed. So my protection was to deny reality, or not say yes to things. And I realized for me that I wasn't showing up in my life because I wasn't saying yes. Because I wasn't available to what was so in my life. I was so familiar with just judging. So for me in the pause, I was judging silence. I was judging the pause. I was, instead of, why do you want me to stop? Why do you want me to pause? Why, all this kind of stuff, instead of just being with it. And so the more that I'm around, my tribe and people like you that encourage those moments, to take those moments and just be with them, the more that I can be present to my life. And that's, that's a gift that keeps on giving. It has, um, I don't want to say tragedies, but it has things in it that it's like, wow, where the hell, that come from, or, I didn't think that I would be dealing with that, but I'm engaged in it. It's not autopilot. It is not just accepting my a reality. It is saying, okay, now that I'm aware of this, now that I have taken a moment to see this, I can make a choice to stay here or move on, and grow from that. And a pause, I think the pause gives us access to our choices.
And our vulnerability. When
Yeah.
we're talking about experiencing all the shades of our life,
Hmm.
um, one disconnect is that if I slow down, then I will fall apart. Or if I slow down, then I'll realize I'm in a terrible relationship. And then I am going to have to take some personal responsibility for that.
Right.
Right. So your original question of where is the disconnect is, I'm so overwhelmed. So how could I possibly have enough resources to deal with whatever on the other side of that?
Yeah.
And my like biggest wish for humanity and for the earth is that everyone could have moments of remembering their inherent value and worth, if not also divinity, and that there's a worthiness to investigate what is, and then make decisions towards what could be.
Right.
And the pressure of making money and managing households and social calendars and travel and the pace that we've collectively been on. I've been watching for years as my business has grown because people are looking for tools to self-soothe. Not that they call it that, but
Right.
what I'm seeing is that someone's busy, so they want to slow down, or someone feels weak, so they're looking for strength, or someone's stiff, so they're looking for flexibility. They're literally looking for that something that can give them a shift in perspective, which is the transitional space.
Right.
There's nothing that's not connected to the word pause in my brain.
Right. Wow. Yeah, I can definitely see that. It is, for me, even though I know pause is different from stop, it's, and many times a pause occurs to me as stop. So I can't stop, because if I stop, I'll miss something and all that other kind of stuff. But a pause, there is still movement and activity in a pause, versus a stop.
Yeah, I feel like we're in a hard reset period right
Right.
now, sheltering in place. That's a stop.
Right.
Where the pause coexists in that is what will be my attitude within that. And let's acknowledge that it's significantly easier if we're single, right? Significantly easier if we're not the breadwinner. Significantly easier if we're not also crisis educating our children at home, right? They're,
Right.
whatever one's reality is to their life, if there are a lot of logistics, then pausing in it of itself seems inaccessible.
Right.
However, regardless of how busy anyone's external life is, what's really juicy and what's really magical is how much space and acreage there is internally. If we just take like a hot second to dial in, which can be scary and vulnerable and, you know, messy and all of that, and also beautiful.
Right. What just came up for me is that, do you have like a practice, you know, that you can share within this conversation to kind of encourage a pause, you know, for people, so they don't feel like it needs to be this big audacious
Yeah.
turn my life upside down type of thing? I would love if.
Absolutely. I would go back to the breath technique that I mentioned at the top of practice. It's Kumbhaka with a K. You could also just Google it, you know, yoga breath retention. Two counterindications are if you're in a body that's gestating a baby, we don't recommend ever holding the breath because it can impact fetal heart rate.
Okay.
Or if you're in a body that experiences extremes in blood pressure, like high blood pressure or low blood pressure, then we don't recommend those individuals pause while breathing. For those people in that bucket, just think about creating the longest breath possible. So if you start your inhale as a 4 count, work your way up to that your inhale's a 6 count. And then work your way up to that your inhale's an 8 count and match it on the other end. And that's where everybody starts. Inhale for 4, exhale for 4. Then inhale for 6 and exhale for 6. And then inhale for 8 and exhale for 8. And you'll find your edge real quick. Now, people in bodies that can pause, then we add a pause at the top, Surya Kumbhaka, and we add a pause at the bottom, Baya Kumbhaka. This impacts personal heart rate. You can be there as long as you want. In fact, the old school yogis, the minute breathing is you take 60 into 4 parts, and you inhale for 15, hold on full for 15 seconds, exhale for 15 seconds, and hold empty for 15 seconds.
Okay.
I'm nowhere near that. I'm like at a 12 count, maybe. Right. On my best day.
That's pretty close, right?
On like my very best day. So start with inhale for 4 and just pause for a few heartbeats.
Right.
Exhale for 4 and pause for a few heartbeats. And just do that for like a minute. And within that minute, you might discover, okay, I have a bigger breath capacity. So now I'm inhaling for 6 and pause for a few heartbeats, and exhale for 6 and pause for a few heartbeats. And the invitation is, you know, give yourself at least 2 minutes, because it just takes the body about that much time to settle. So if you set yourself like a 2 or a 3 minute timer every single day, you'll find out very quickly that your breath capacity increases, and that there's a lot of information in the pause at the top and the bottom of the breath. And the only other caveat I would say to that is, almost universally, one of those will be more comfortable than the other. Mm-hmm. It tends to be psychologically driven. So, you know, if we're in a body that we inhale to full and we hold on full, and that feels majestic and fantastic, that tends to be like emotionally connected to having a lot and or grasping at a lot.
Right.
And then the inverse of that, right? If you exhale and empty and you're super comfortable in the absence of breath, that tends to be connected emotionally to people that are either comfortable like in minimal spaces and or relish lack. And these are the things that, like, I want you to start thinking about. You inhabit the breath, but really start to notice, like, emotionally, how am I reacting in the space at the top of the bottom? And then what do I think about what's happening in the space and the top and the bottom?
Right.
And then you're supposed to have a conversation about that with someone that you trust or with a teacher. So feel free to circle back to me after you do that.
Right. No, that is great. No, thank you for that. It's like I have noticed within, my meditation, practice is that there is an expansiveness of my body. I can feel my body going out this way, and first time I noticed that, it was like, okay, where are we going here? Because before it felt like it was just moving here. It was just I felt my body going this way, and it was just my breathing was just up this way. And recently I have just noticed that it's expanding. It's like I'm expanding my territory around me. And it's just a very interesting, because I've been journaling that down, and it's like, I don't know what that means. I don't know I'm trying to understand, all that, but just really being committed to, just taking those moments, it's just each day there's an opportunity for me to learn something about myself. And I think the conversation that I have around self-care and self-awareness, for me, before I was connected to this community, it was really, self-care was, bubble bath and candles, right? That's it. I don't get time for bubble baths and candles, right? So there's no care to my life. And it has expanded so much more than that. And it's something that I'm just willing to learn about myself, and just figure out what do I need to do to take care of myself.
And that is ultimately your job, right? Like if I'm a spirit in a meat sack, let's say, then my job is to care for my meat sack. If I'm a spontaneous creation on planet Earth called human, and this is the only shot I get, then I better take care of myself. And for me, that's my emotional landscape. For me, that's also my spiritual landscape. For me, that's something as simple as drink a glass of water after I brush my teeth and scrape my tongue in the morning, so that I'm hydrated, and taking care of myself teaches me how to take care of other people.
Right.
And tons of traditions talk about that. Shakespeare specifically, to thine own self be true.
Right.
Right. So that I respect myself enough and also respect someone else. Do unto others as you would do unto yourself. If we're going to be charitable towards someone else, why not be charitable towards ourselves? If we're not also, I think about, like, I grew up in South Texas. So I grew up in a Methodist household, which was awesome. You could go to the dance hall on Saturday as long as you took a shower and you didn't smell like smoke and you were in the pew on Sunday morning, right? Like a real liberal Christian parochial upbringing. I'm so grateful for that. And part of that is, if someone's sick in the church, then we all take turns, and you make a casserole and you drop it off, right? Like, you fundamentally care for someone and feed them if they're in need. And yet I don't take more than 15 minutes from point A and point B in my car, eating my cheeseburger and listening to the news, and then formulating what I'm going to do once I get there. Like, it's too many things happening in the same time that we're not taking the care, or taking the reflection, or taking the pause. And I'm all for cheeseburgers. Eat a cheeseburger mindfully.
Right. Well, no, that is great. I think we could talk about this for hours, but there are some moments that we have to tend to, right? But is there anything that you, like, a final thing you had, that that was a good final word, but is there any final words or anything that you want to share with within this conversation?
Oh goodness. Just I encourage you to find your own rhythm and be brave in the transitions and wake up, drink water, and not try not to be a jerk. That's it.
I can sign on to that, right? Drink water, wake up, drink water, and try not to be a jerk.
And may the force be with us. Yeah.
So your websites and your contact information, is on. This has definitely been great, and I enjoy your smile, your insight, and just your willingness to be in this conversation.
Thank you so much for hosting me and popping my podcast cherry.
Oh, I love you so much. Right? Thank you very much. Would you take a moment to sit in the green room, and I will finish the show, and I will say a proper goodbye. Oh boy, this is great. I think the one thing that I got out of that is that we have to create it for ourselves. We have to figure out, what a pause looks like. What does care look like, for ourselves, and just that within that moment, within that that pause, that something's being said, and being willing to listen to that. So the world is waiting for you. The world needs you, and the world wants you. So go be you. Have a blessed day, and I'll see you tomorrow at 11 a.m.